Hey, good evening, everybody. For those of you who are new here, I'm Paul Sheesley, and I'm a therapist and executive performance coach. And I work at the intersection of emotional health, identity development, and leadership psychology, helping high performance professionals understand the internal architecture that drives their decisions, their relationships, and their sense of self, essentially. And today we're talking about something almost no one prepares us for, or you, is how to recover your identity after achievement. You've hit the goal, you've built the company, you got the promotion, and you finished the design or the degree, right? And so you close the deal, you reach the milestone that you've been chasing for years, right? So, and then something strange happens where you ultimately, instead of having a sense of clarity, there's this kind of disoriented feeling. And instead of confidence, you end up feeling uncertain. And so, unfortunately, instead of the concept of I've now arrived of where I need to be, you have this sense of what now, right? And so let's talk about why that happens. And more importantly, how to recover your identity in healthy ways. So I think the first one is to understand that achievement often becomes one's identity. And so when you pursue something for a long time, it actually stops becoming being just a goal, right? And it really becomes who you are. And I'm the one building this is the concept that we might have. I'm the one climbing. I'm the one proving. I'm the one striving. And so, give me 1 second here. Okay. Yeah. And so when you achieve it, that organizing force essentially collapses. Right? So the structure disappears. And if your identity was fused in of the pursuit of whatever that goal is, you might feel like a part of you has also disappeared with it. And that's not weakness, that's actually psychological attachment to the role. And so recovery really begins with separating identity from outcome, right? Essentially, I think when we reach those success points, we've got to grieve the pursuit, as I like to put it, and not just celebrate the win, right? So most people like to celebrate the result, of course, but very few people grieve that chapter closing. And so you're not just losing the stress, you're actually losing quite a few other things. So you're losing the adrenaline, the urgency, you're losing clear metrics, the external validation, the narrative of becoming, right? That chapter had a meaning, even if it was exhausting. And so, I explained to others that recovery really requires acknowledging that season mattered and it's over. But unprocessed endings can feel often like confusion. And so I think processed endings are really like a new transition. And so I'll often talk with folks about rebuilding identity around values and not validation. Because when I think about achievement often feels or feeds validation, and identity recovery requires values. So some things to ask yourself is what do I stand for beyond my performance? What matters when no one's applauding? And who am I when I'm not striving? And if your self-worth was contingent on performance, then obviously achievement will always feel temporary. And if your identity is anchored in value, or values, success becomes more integrated and not destabilizing. And I think this is where we'll call it psychological maturity deepens, because you shift from proving to choosing, right? So during achievement seasons, you're often proving something. You're proving competence, you're proving resilience, you're proving your intelligence, you're proving your worth. And so after achievement, you have a choice. Do I continue proving or do I begin choosing? So choosing looks like this. It's intentional pacing, it's strategic alignment, it's meaning-driven decisions, it's emotional sustainability. Identity recovery happens when your decisions shift from what will validate me to what aligns with who I am becoming. And so one goal can narrow identity. When that goal ends, life feels empty because your world was condensed around one metric. And so recovery requires expansion. Expansion such as relationships, health, creativity, spirituality, mentorship, contribution, intellectual growth. It's not your title, you're not your revenue, and you're not your milestone. You are a multi-dimensional human being. And so if one area collapses and everything is too narrow, the system's too narrow, you're ultimately going to feel that kind of that drop, especially that dopamine drop. And there's obviously a neurological component here, right? So pursuit of anything drives dopamine, and completion essentially resets it. So our brains do that. You may feel flat or unmotivated or restless after completing some milestone. So instead of immediately chasing yet another high stakes goal, try something else. Try stabilizing your routine, prioritizing your sleep and movement, engaging in low pressure growth, practice reflection instead of reaction. Might even be a good time to get into therapy or some coaching. Because impulse-driven reinvention often creates regret, and integrated reinvention actually creates stability. And so clarifying who you're becoming and not what you're achieving is important. So achievement answers, right? What did I accomplish? And I think identity answers, who am I becoming? And so after a major milestone, you want to sit with a few things. What did this season teach me about myself? What parts of me strengthened? And what parts of me were compensating? And what do I want more of and less of moving forward? Recovery is not about replacing the old goal. It's about refining the next version of yourself. So you want to be aware of the immediate replacement goals. I find that high performance or high performers often panic when they feel lost. So they start a new project immediately, they change jobs impulsively, they'll make dramatic life decisions or overcommit, or they'll escalate ambition. And that urgency is often avoidance. You don't need a bigger goal, you need integration. Pause before escalation. So identity recovery is integration. It's not reinvention, right? So you don't need to erase who you were. You need to integrate the achievement into a broader self concept. So instead of saying something like that was everything, you want to shift to that was just a chapter. Chapters shape you, they don't define you. And so if you stripped away the title, the status, the outcome, the applause, who are you? And can you tolerate sitting with that question long enough to answer it honestly? And that's where real identity formation happens. Before we close, I'd like to at least elicit 3 reflective questions. One, if no one could see your next achievement, would you still pursue it? Second question is, did this goal align with your values or your need for validation? And 3, are you trying to escape the discomfort of transition or learn from it. So be patient with this season. Feeling unsettled after achievement doesn't mean you chose wrong. It often means you're expanding. And so if this conversation resonates, especially if you're navigating leadership, performance, or post-achievement, you can find deeper conversations like this on my YouTube channel, here on LinkedIn. And I also, you can follow along or subscribe, stay connected. Again, because achievement is external, identity is internal, and when the two align, stability follows. Thanks for your time this evening. I'll see you guys next.